the final smash that we'll ever see in My Hero Academia was finally animated. And I'm not gonna lie, guys, seeing a decade-long journey finally come to an end, the final fight, and now we've entered into the epilogue, I have a lot of emotions. Like, I'm emotional. I did not expect to get hit by so many emotions when this episode was animated today, but here I am. Like, I ugly cried. Yeah, when I was watching this episode, like, I started having tears come out of my eyes. Just seeing, like, the gradual buildup of, like, all the heroes coming together, trying to fight back against All For One, the Demon Lord, the ultimate evil, the final boss. Just seeing every iconic character within the story that has kind of just come together to push the narrative and stuff, just working together to get Izuku across the finish line, to be able to deliver the final smash to bring down All For One. It's a really emotional episode, because if you did not catch it, this episode really just paints it. Like, it directly tells you the main themes and messages of what My Hero Academia is about, and kind of how different Izuku is from All Might. How he is a fundamentally vastly different hero. Like, for a very long time, My Hero Academia's core themes, or the themes that Izuku was dealing with, he was dealing with imposter syndrome. He felt like he was an imposter of All Might, like he was trying to be another All Might. And for a very long time within the middle of the series, he eventually managed to unshackle himself. But a lot of people still felt he was pretty much All Might, or a bootleg All Might, so to speak. But as the story progresses, you start to realize just fundamentally what makes Izuku so different from All Might. And this episode directly tells you that it's because of his weakness. And it's very ironic, actually, that this is what drives people to do things that they normally wouldn't do, and what is Izuku's greatest strength. And obviously, it sounds extremely corny and all that when you hear, like, his weakness is his strength, because obviously it's a traditional line not just within shonen, but just within comics and stuff like that. And sometimes tropes are tropes for a reason, because they're pretty good. And in this case, the trope is used very well, because from the very beginning of My Hero Academia, we have seen this trope used by Izuku and My Hero Academia, and how it's progressed his character. So let's get into the development and what this episode really represents for the final ribbon on top for My Hero Academia. So Izuku is obviously not the same type of personality as All Might. When you see All Might walk into a room, he's buff, macho, he has, One For All for the first time, like you see him going up against All For One, you look at this man and you're like, he cannot lose. He is the symbol of peace. He is this wall, this brick wall that is unmovable. He is this pillar that is unbreakable. That is what you look at when you see All Might. And when you look at someone like Izuku, when you see this broken shell of a man, this man that's barely able to stand, being helped along by people that are theoretically kind of have lesser quirks than him, but in reality, that's not the main message of the story. Just because your quirk might be weaker than some other quirks, you still have a role to play. The point of the matter is Izuku is supposed to be this pinnacle of strength, or at least his quirk is. And seeing him needing help throughout this entire episode, many people will be like, how is he supposed to be the #1 hero? How is he supposed to be the guy to rise to the challenge to bring down All For One when he can barely stand? And that is the purpose here, is that thanks to Izuku's weakness, thanks to him not being this overwhelming might and strength, it caused others to spur into action and were inspired by his actions, which is what makes the All Might scene so powerful here when he starts talking about, like, how Izuku is his greatest hero. It's because at the beginning of the story, I remember talking about this literally almost a decade ago, actually, in my manga chapter reviews, but All Might was saved by Izuku. He even mentions early on in the series that he was feeling disconnected. He was no longer doing what he normally should do as a hero, and he felt like there was just this major disconnect with him. He was losing his way. And thanks to Izuku coming in out of nowhere, saving the day, trying to save Bakugo, and all that, it really spurred All Might into action to do things that he normally would not do. And it reminded him of what it means to be a hero. And so from the very beginning, the first person that Izuku saved wasn't necessarily just Bakugo, it was actually All Might, which is ironic when you think about it, because All Might at that time period was viewed as this immovable object, the indestructible symbol of peace, but he was saved by Izuku. And so this entire theme here is just so beautiful, seeing it come together with everybody helping him out to get to the final hit, the final smash, and he goes in and he just lays that final hit on him, it is just such a beautiful moment. Like, this animation here, this art, it's just the cherry on top. And, you know, not to kind of throw shots, but honestly, just a minute of this animation for My Hero Academia absolutely curb stomps One Punch Man. I know the bar is literally under the floor when it comes to One Punch Man's art animation, but still, it is just crazy the difference of treatment that My Hero Academia is getting alongside of One Punch Man this season, because, like, if you go back years ago, people would assume that One Punch Man would be getting this My Hero Academia treatment, but My Hero would be getting the One Punch Man treatment, but obviously the opposites happened. And to be fair, this is the final season, and I'm glad My Hero Academia is getting the love it deserves, especially for this just climactic finale, which, let's just get right into the message here with Shigaraki, and kind of how it fundamentally does something very different that not a lot of comics like to do. And I really respect Horikoshi's decision here, which drew a lot of ire and anger within the fan base when this actually happened in the manga. So let's segue into the final scene with Shigaraki. So this final scene with Shigaraki really is the cherry on top of a very wonderful cake for the final scene we will ever see of him. And I'm just going to outline and say this right now. I don't think Shigaraki's conclusion was perfectly handled. But in the grand scheme of things, it is a good conclusion. It is a solid conclusion that wraps up his character, and I think it's done in a very nice way. The best way that Horikoshi-sensei could have done in this moment. And let me explain. Izuku promised Shigaraki he would save him, no matter what. And I know a lot of people are thinking, okay, how did Izuku save Shigaraki if Shigaraki freaking died in this episode? Well, there's other ways of saving than just saving their life. In this case, what Izuku did, he saved Shigaraki's soul. He saved him from being enslaved by his master. He saved from his body being used. He saved him from his will being manipulated and distorted. Izuku freed him. That's what he did. And he allowed Shigaraki to say his final words, his final things he wanted to say to the world, and Izuku wants to respect that. He wants, you know, Izuku to tell Spinner, like, hey, tell Spinner I tried to destroy to the very end. And all these different things here really come together to show that Izuku saved him, even if it wasn't necessarily saving his life, he saved his very soul. And I think that a lot of people don't understand this messaging here, is that Izuku did do the exact same thing he said he would do. And I also feel like it's handled in such a way that it's beautiful, because let's face the cold, hard facts of reality here. Shigaraki he's hurt a lot of people. Even Izuku mentions that. He will never forgive what Shigaraki has done. He has harmed so many people, not even factoring in All For One's actions. Shigaraki alone has done a lot of damage. And because of that fact, there is not anywhere ever that would be able to hold Shigaraki forever. He is destruction itself. He destroys. And something like him, a being like him, is... Let's just be honest, there is no proper outcome for him besides, obviously, the conclusion we got here. Him being locked away in prison or whatever would just not be a good conclusion, and also, it just, because of how the narrative would be, he could just get out and harm more people. So, I think in the grand scheme of things, it would just do a lot more damage to the narrative, but it also damaged Izuku as a character as well, if you want my personal opinion. So, Shigaraki dying in this fight, honestly, I wish a lot more comics would do this. I'm not saying to be brutal and just kill villains off like what Punisher does. I'm just saying that, like, there needs to be more villains that face the repercussions of their actions and actually meet an end to their story than allowing to go free and live forever and ever and ever, despite them killing thousands of people, so to speak. So, I am glad that this actually happened within the story. However, when this happened in the manga, there was a lot of people that was upset about this. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of people were absolutely angry because they're like, oh, so Izuku lost. Oh, Izuku couldn't save him. And they started memeing and mocking Izuku. And at this time period for My Hero Academia's story, I was very critical of My Hero. Like, the final arc, I was very critical in my reviews of the manga. I talked about many aspects I did not like, but this was an aspect that I liked. What Horikoshi cobbled together in this moment was great. And the anime bringing it to life just makes it so much better. And let's get back into the topic of the core messaging here. I think, in general, seeing Izuku being able to inspire an entire generation showcases how his new symbol, what he is as an individual, is a lot stronger than what All Might was. And let's explain. For a very long time, it's been painted constantly, and I think anyone at this time, if you made it literally this far into My Hero, you already know this, but there is probably some that might not know. But All Might was someone that should never have had that much weight put on his shoulders. It built an impossible society. For instance, when one day All Might would fall, which he did, it would cause a lot of problems. It would cause a lot of destruction, a lot of pain, a lot of tragedy, and that's what we saw throughout multiple seasons of My Hero once All Might fell from grace. And that's the point here, is that there was too much burden, too much weight put on one man. And Izuku, even though he is incredibly strong, and arguably stronger than All Might, because of how he mastered One for All, he still didn't have that same vibe to him, like, oh, I am here, you know, everything's gonna be okay. In this sense, he inspired heroes that were weaker than him to get up and start fighting as well, to never give up. They can all be heroes if they want to be, and that's very inspiring. He is a very inspiring hero, and that is the main message here that the story tries to paint. It even ties in to his name, Deku, which I think is beautiful, by the way. It is a very nice way to do a callback to the very beginning introduction of his name, and then finally seeing it. It's beautiful. Super, super beautiful. I couldn't help but, like, cry a little bit when I actually saw that scene. But with that being said, we are now in the epilogue. This is the end. Like, we actually are in the final stretches of the story. There is no more fights, really. It is literally going to be just wrapping up loose ends with characters, the conclusion of the story, and that's about it. And my theory here, this is what I think might happen. I don't believe Horikoshi has announced that he's working on a new manga, or at least a manga that isn't My Hero Academia. I could be wrong there. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below. If you want my hot take, I think what's going to happen when we get to the final episode of My Hero Academia's season, for this season, and it's the final episode of the entire series, there might be an announcement. Either a movie announcement that My Hero's getting another movie, might be an epilogue of some sorts for the series. It's potentially possible. Or is going to announce that maybe there's going to be a continuation of the manga. One of those two I could definitely see happening relatively soon, because My Hero Academia is fundamentally a very popular franchise. It's a very popular IP, and with how Shonen Jump is, and how obviously they're hurting for very big titles, they would love to capitalize on the big boom and explosion of popularity that My Hero Academia is getting right now, with probably continuing the manga in some shape or form. Now, to be fair, obviously a lot of people will say this is a cash grab, and to be fair, it kind of would be, but there is a lot to still explore with My Hero Academia. I mean, there's different countries, obviously, there's different heroes, different villains, you have the whole singularity factor with the quirks and stuff that still could be fully explored in the future, maybe go, like, time skip 100 to 200 years in the future. There's a lot of things that still can be explored within the series. Hell, they could even go into space travel if they really want to, which would be weird. Yes, I know it would be extremely weird, but it is possible. When you think of a world that's able to create, like, black holes, all these weird abilities, it's not far-fetched to assume that the characters could extend into the stars and, you know, like, have different planets and stuff, and you could have, like, a sci-fi setting for My Hero Academia, which would be kind of cool. But, all I'm saying is I see in the upcoming episodes, we are going to get potentially an announcement for a continuation. If we don't, then I guess it really is the end for My Hero Academia, which is another whole conversation I'll have when the episode eventually does air. But yeah, we are in the final stretches, everyone. My Hero is coming to an end. Never would have thought. Like, think about this, man. 10 years. It's been 10 years. And it's over. It's coming to an end. Like, this is not something that many anime series could get, or manga in general, adaptations. They typically get a few seasons, and you never get to see the finale animated, or at least animated well. But that's the opposite here. We're getting the finale, and it's animated beautifully. It's going off with a massive explosion that everybody's enjoying. I've seen people that is extremely critical of My Hero Academia, even jumping for joy and happy about this final season. And I think that is amazing. It's an amazing moment to see just even the haters of My Hero Academia loving My Hero Academia. But I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for watching. May all of you have a fantastic day or night wherever you live. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. Leave a comment on my video. Helps with the algorithm. Chibi out.